start by addressing what security by design is, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty details of how we actually implement that into Visics.
Security by design essentially means that you already encounter security in your design phase. So you're trying to be proactive, implementing your policies instead of doing the things afterwards, what happens usually a lot of times. So we are already implementing it in the foundation of our product in the design phase. That's what it essentially means.
Okay, so it's all about being proactive versus reactive when it comes to security. As I understand, there's 3 different approaches that we take, and that is authorization, network security, and auditing. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
Could you go into those 3 different subtopics for us and explain a little bit about what they are, how they work, and then how we actually implement that into our system?
I can. There are more methods than those 3, but we only zoom in on those 3. The first one is authorization. What authorization basically means is what you can do and what you cannot do. So mainly it's focused on certain functions, what you can do, or mutations in the system. So it's really like right-based or role-based. So to compare it to a Visics example, that can be that operator is allowed to view at certain camera feeds, for example, but cannot manually batch out certain contractors from a confined space. But the lead operator can. So we have levels of authorization standards, and pretty much it's based on your function or your job description, what you can and what you can do. So we are making different levels of authorizations. That's pretty much how we apply it.
Understood. I think it's very nice to add into this topic that authorization is by function, correct, and also by your training certification level, because it's also been worked in with our Visics Academy for certification levels as well. So that's a really interesting point that you make. The next one is network security. So what is that? What are the components of network security? How does it work?
So we take different approaches to increase the network security. In this specific session, I want to zoom in on 2 methods. The first one is segmentation. Segmentation essentially means that you create standalone segments in your network and that you allow traffic to flow from segment A to segment B when it's needed for the primary functions of the Visics system, instead of making the connection transparent and that every data can flow to each other. So you essentially classify all the different data streams and only allow what is needed for the system. So a concrete example can be if you have some IoT data coming out of the field, such as gas data from your gas detectors or tracking data from asset or people you want to track. That data only needs to go to the data engine to process the data to put it on a dashboard later to make it more functional. So what you mainly need to do is explicitly allow that traffic flow and make sure that other communication cannot happen.
Okay, so that's segmenting your data. And then you mentioned VPNs, correct? So what the second stream?
We make use of VPNs for different purposes. The biggest purpose is for remote support. So for all our Visics projects, we are, in most of the cases, are able to connect remotely to the system to assist the customer with incidents or adding some extra badges to the system, stuff like that. Obviously, you want that happens through a secure connection. That's what a VPN is for. So usually you use a VPN when you're communicating over a third-party network, like the internet, for example. And what a VPN essentially means is you can kind of compare it with a traffic tunnel. So if you have a tunnel, what goes under the water where cars go through, you have two entry points or exit points. So you have one at the beginning and one at the end. And all the traffic or cars which are driving or passing the tunnel gets encrypted at the beginning by a router or firewall. And when it exits the tunnel, it gets decrypted again. So everything what happens in the tunnel is encrypted. And that makes sure that, for example, you don't have eavesdropping from hackers or other people who are trying to do something bad with your data. So what we are doing is we are using the latest industry standards to make sure that that data is encrypted how it's supposed to be. Another example of VPNs can be for the Visics cloud products. So it's not necessarily for remote connectivity, but for the primary functions of a cloud product. So for example, our rapid deployment unit can be based on a cloud server. So that server is somewhere hosted in the cloud. The RDU is on site in a chemical factory or an oil plant, and it uses the internet to connect to that cloud server, and all that traffic, what's going in between the RDU and that cloud environment, is encrypted. So essentially, we use it for two different use cases: remote connectivity or cloud products.
Okay, understood. And could you tell us what the definition of VPN actually is?
It actually means virtual private network.
Okay.
So what you're essentially doing is that you are, what's the proper word for that? Extending your end-to-end control over a third-party network. So you make use of somebody else's network, but you're still in control of the data, what flows through that tunnel.
Through the tunnel. Understood. So we are creating secure tunnels in order to have secure data and communications to our client sites in the fields, wherever they are in the world, right? Because we do that here from, we provide service from the Netherlands and from India primarily, and we provide that service globally. So all of those channels are secure communication channels using VPN network connectivity.
That's correct.
Okay, understood. So that clarifies how we use network security, and then that's in VPN connectivity and segmenting our network. And you also mentioned we have auditing as our third pillar of security by design. Can you explain what auditing is, how we use that, the checks and balances that go into that process?
Yes. Auditing essentially means that you are logging all kinds of sensitive stuff, what happens in your system, to say it in a very practical way. So you have to think of mutations in the configurations, login attempts, even if they are failed. So successful or failed attempts, they are both very interesting to analyze, so to say. So what you're essentially doing with auditing is making sure that all the policies that we created in our design phase, aka that security by design, that it's actually compliant to the practical world slash real life. So pretty much it's like a way to evaluate your policies, adapt when they are not matching the present day anymore. So to improve your security, so it's pretty much an circle of checking the policies that you made in your design phase and adapt when necessary. So we can do that in multiple ways. Some monitoring of that auditing purposes happen in an automated way. So we use third-party tools for that. But we also do manual checks.
Okay, I think that one is pretty straightforward about having a history of your activity in order to check your policy and make sure everyone is abiding by the policy and that the policy is still up to date and fitting for practical scenarios. That brings us to the end of our third pillar of security by design. So we've actually covered authorization, which is about having roles which gives you access or denies you access to certain features and functionalities. We have network security, which is split into VPN connectivity and network segmenting, right? And then we have auditing, which is the process of tracking historical activities, and then you can double check your activity against your policy, review your policy, and also make sure your policy is being implemented correctly. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add to what is security by design, its importance, or how we use it? Or do you think we've hit the topics that you wanted to address today?
I think we have hit the topics. Obviously, there are more methods than the three that we pointed out in this session, but we don't want to expose all of our brilliant standards to the whole world. So I think it's good that we keep the scope to these three topics. But the most important thing to this whole session is that adaptation. So in case of that we find something new, or we do find a vulnerability or something bad, that we keep improving our security circle. So making the policies from day one and design phase is very important, but also keep evaluating, keep adapting, keep being compliant with the industry standards. So especially evaluation, that's maybe more important than the initial design phase. Yeah, especially IT, because the world is changing very, very fast with technology.
Yeah. Overnight, they say.
Yeah, totally overnight. Can be overnight.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing your expertise to the table today, or the computer today, for our audience. We are going to share this with the world, in addition to a very short blog that you've written, which goes more in depth into these three different pillars of security by design and how we implement it. If people have more questions, may they reach out to you freely?
Yeah, they can.
Great. Then we'll also make sure that your contact information is connected to this video and the blog. And thank you for your time and sharing with us today.
You're welcome.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.